the greatest coach in the history of professional sports, Sir Alex Ferguson. You're looking very dapper tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My mother looks after me well.
Looks like we're the only two who got dressed this evening. So what would you do, Sir Alex, if some of this scruffy mob here showed up and were players and wanted to get on the Manchester United bus?
Well, when I was first started as a coach, everyone had to have a short haircut, all shaven. I don't know how managers allow players on the bus with a beard. That's not for me. Mm-hmm. Now, whether I've not lost my strength, if I would allow that. But what I did like to see was my team coming to a ground with a United blazer on, white shirt and a tie, because they're representing Manchester United.
And what would you do if they didn't show up like that?
Well, I think it's as part of the education you have to give them, the responsibility they have as a Manchester United player. And it's just a discipline. And I think that was a strong discipline at United. And it's still today, even Louis van Gaal, all smart. I noticed the boys are not playing, sitting in the back of the director's box, blazing flannels on. I like that. Mm-hmm. That's for me. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you guys with the beards.
You'd recommend a shave, would you? Yeah. Did you see the game on Saturday, the Everton game?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
Brilliant. They did really well. I thought it was going to be a difficult game, actually, and I saw that Everton did all their strongest team out, you know, and I thought this is going to be a difficult game because I think we've lost the last 3 years there. Mm-hmm. But they won very comfortably. Complete control. And the way they changed their system a little bit, United, and I thought Everton couldn't handle it. So I was pleased. Because after the great test of any Manchester United team is how you recover after defeat. They lost 3-0 to Arsenal, a bad defeat. They come out in the next game, win. And that's the best way to answer the critics and also to show the resolve and the determination to get over a defeat, because it's not easy at a club like United, because when you lose, you're front page. When you win, you're back page. It's a difference.
Better to be on the back page. So there are, I think, if I counted correctly, there were 8 of the 18 players who showed up who played on or in the squad on Saturday were players that you had signed. How long does it take to knit everybody else together into a really cohesive unit? Is that a matter of years, or can you do it in a season?
Well, if you talk about the present core of players, Louis van Gaal brought in 5 new players last season, 5 new players this year, and that's difficult. Particularly the players they brought in were players from other countries. The Premier Division is very difficult, really difficult. When we brought players in from abroad, we always gave them, first season, forget it, second season, we're okay. But 1 or 2 excelled, surprised us by doing really well at the beginning. In my time, the thing that was different from me and Louis van Gaal, of course, is that I had longevity. I was there 27 years. So when I went to United at first, my job was to build the foundation in that football club. Because I think most managers, quite rightly, have to think about a football team, the first team, because it is a result industry. They're there to make sure the first team does well. I never thought that way. I thought about rebuilding the youth in the club, so that gave me a foundation and it gave me a pipeline of young players coming through. And my conviction was never going to change. And I told the directors on day one that's exactly what I was going to do. And of course, I was concerned about the first team. We were second bottom in the league. And I just took my time with that. I wasn't in a hurry. Most concentration was on scouting, trialling, and coaching for the young people.
Now, At the end of the Everton game, United are in third position in the English Premier League. It's the end of October, and obviously everybody here is connected to the business school in one way or another. And an important thing in business is setting expectations. And were you managing United today, knowing that there's a long part of the season still to come? You still got to play Christmas. You got to you're in the other different cups and championships. How do you go about setting the expectation of where you would want the club to wind up at the end of the season, knowing that you're in third position today?
Well, I think the difference, you take my job at Aberdeen. Aberdeen is the north of Scotland, cut off from the central belt where the main stream of football is. I had to build an expectation. I had to create an expectation for the players. Whereas at United, you have to live with the expectation. So every player that comes to that club, even after Saturday's game, every player in that team has to live with the expectation. So the expectation is to win. Absolutely no doubt. Whether it's a European Cup or a League Cup, they all have to win. That's the mentality they have. The mindset is winning mindset. There's no question about that. So I never ever said to the players, we've got to win the European Cup. We've got to win the league. I never say that. Every time a press conference, well, I hope we win something. I was not going to get carried away and give them a headline. But deep down, win every game. That was the mentality. I never expected to lose a game, ever.
Would you be talking to the players at this juncture about the possibility of winning the league this year?
No.
And when would you start privately calculating whether or not you thought...
You won't believe this, I'm going to tell you. Every beginning of January, I used to get all my opponents' games and predict the point total they were going to get against ours. And it was never far wrong. Never far wrong. Even to the point that I knew we'd maybe have to make 3 points up in one of our main opponents. I was pretty accurate in that. And I did this every year. You know, so that I had my win sort of a
So
challenge.
would you sit down with each of the top clubs or the whole
or just the top
league?
clubs,
Just
our main opponents. I would know by January 1st who our main challengers were going to be. And then I used to do that. It was just, I kept it myself. I didn't share it with anyone. I was never far wrong.
That's good.
I was always, even the years we lost it, I knew the dangers we had in terms of our challengers.
And you were pretty accurate about say in January, about the number of points that United itself would have at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So let me change the topic a little bit to two things that again are germane to every sort of business. One is assessing and judging talent, and another is discipline. So let me take you back. It's 1957. There is a young man growing sideburns, Alec Ferguson, who's turning out in his first seasons for a club in Scotland, in Glasgow, called Queen's Park. How would you assess the talent of that player?
Well, outstanding comes to mind. But, well, I'm probably one of the few players that played for Glasgow schools, Scotland youth, Scottish amateur, and the full Scottish team. So, but I wasn't an outstanding player. I was a goal scorer. In fact, at United, we used to get into the video analysis room most mornings. And this morning, our goalkeeping coach, Eric Steele, says, I was just pulling up your goal scoring record. He said, it's pretty good, that. 179 goals in 300 games or something like that. And I said, but that's only league goals. I said, where's my cup goals? So he said, well, I'll try and get them out. We couldn't get them. Couldn't find the cup goals. I don't know why, but no, I was a goal scorer, and I had a great career without actually winning anything. I went to Rangers at a bad time when Celtic were completely dominant. They just won the European Cup under Jockstein, and they were a fantastic team. They were difficult to beat at that time, but I enjoyed it. I had a good career. The thing about playing is your best time of your life. which relates to, I would never ask any of my players to retire to become a coach, but I encourage them to take their badges. When I went into full-time football, because I was an engineer, I was a toolmaker until I was 22, I was part-time at football. I made my mind up, I was not going back to engineering. So I took all my coaching badges. I prepared to stay in the game, like everyone should do. If they're going to do something, prepare, whether it's through study or what I did, take your coaching badges. And I think it's a really important issue.
And how well behaved on the field was that young player, Alec Ferguson?
You're getting this from my son, Jason. Had a bad record.
Pardon?
Had a bad record.
Uh-huh.
I was sent off 8 times.
Pardon?
I know. But I was misunderstood.
Do you remember some of the incidents about why you were sent off?
Every one of them. Yeah. Retaliation was mostly. Or maybe a weight tackle or something like that, or an elbow in someone's jaw or something like that. I was had a funny run style. I run with my elbows like this, so I was always going to get trouble. Martin's laughing here. I was always going to get trouble because of my elbows. Yeah.
The elbows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about judging other talent several decades later. I'm going to pick on 2 players, David Beckham, or pick 2 players, David Beckham and another one we'll come to in a moment. So how did you first come across Beckham, and how old was he, and what did he seem like as a player when you first saw him?
Well, David came to our notice through our scout in London. We're from the same area as David. He was a headmaster at school, Malcolm Fidgeon, and he put David on the radar. But the real impact came from Bobby Charlton. Bobby had soccer schools at the time, and David had won a placement for Bobby's soccer school in Barcelona. And Bobby come back and says, "I've seen a kid, you need him." So I flagged it up with the chief scout. He says, I've got he's coming next month, just by coincidence. And that was the start. He would be 11 years of age at that time. He was a little thin boy, you know. He had no height, no physique whatsoever, but he had this wonderful talent, you know, in terms of control of the ball, striking the ball was his forte. And his parents were United fans. So his grandfather was a Tottenham fan, but he and his parents were United fans. So he used to come to the game. After we got the contact with him, we invited him to the games every time we were in London. In fact, he was a ball boy in the West Ham game, which is his area of London. And it was a certainty to come to United. He trained at Tottenham for a while. I think he trained somewhere else, maybe Fulham or something like that. But he was always destined to come to United because he wanted to come to United. And in that class of 92, were the team to win the Youth Cup, David never got in the team until the semi-finals because he was just a little boy. Then within months, 6 foot, still thin, no conformation in his body whatsoever, but no, he was just a skinny boy. But, and that group, and it's the same desires. The 7 or 8 of them. They talk about the ones that are well known, Giggs, Scholes, but the 2 Nevilles and David. But we had 2 other players would have been great players, but their careers were cut with bad injury. Chris Casper and Ben Thornley, they were outstanding. But they all practiced.
Give a sense of how hard these guys worked.
Well, the training would start 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. They have their lunch. They would be out in the afternoon practicing all the time, or with the youth coach in terms of the general training. And for David, who lived in accommodation with Mrs. Gosling, with several boys, all other boys, he would go into the School of Excellence at night time and help the coaches with the young kids. So his desires were strong, and also he was a practicer. He practiced. And I think that if the advice I give to any young kid is anyone can play a game of football. Anyone. but practice makes you a real footballer. You see games on a Sunday, pub games, oh, love a game of football. The real players have had a practice ethic about them. You know, you take the, I remember being at lunch in Glasgow many, many years ago, and Gary Player was the guest, your golfer. And they asked him that question, why do you keep practicing from the bunker? Because he was famous for going out the bunker. He says, well, I know I'm going to be in the bunker at one time in a game, maybe twice in a game, and I've got to put in a hole. He says, that's why I practice and practice and practice. That's a great example of what you have to do to be a top player. And David and all these young lads at that time, and all the young kids at United practice well.
Different well-known name, Cristiano Ronaldo. How old was he when you first came across him?
17 he was.
And how did he first hit your radar screen?
It was a great story because I had Carlos Queiroz as my assistant, and Carlos, of course, is Portuguese. And he thought it would be a good idea for us to have an association, a relationship with the Sporting Lisbon, because he'd been there as a kid, and he was from Lisbon. And he set it up. And what we were doing then was sharing coaching. So we would send coaches over there, and they would send coaches to us. And Jim Ryan, who was head of our youth department at the time, youth scouting rather, he came back and says, well, I've seen a player. And he was playing centre forward in the youth team at the time, Cristiano Ronaldo. So I says to Carlos, I says, you know, would be a good idea if maybe we had a bigger relationship here. And he spoke to the president, and the deal was that we couldn't get him the next year, but we could get him 2 years from then. Then Carlos left me the next year. We had promised through the association with him, the relationship, we'd opened a new stadium.
This is at Sporting Lisbon.
Sporting, that's correct. And we flew from the States, from here, to Lisbon and played a game. And Cristiano's playing outside left against John O'Shea, and the poor souls, he's got tortured blood. Tell me, honestly. He's absolutely annihilated. And I'm up there, I'm going, John, get up against him. He says, I can't. So I get my kit manager, says, get up there to the director's box and get Peter Kenyon down right away at half time. So Peter Kenyon came down, I says, we're not leaving here.
Peter Kenyon was the then chief executive of United.
At that time. Yeah. And says, we're not going to go leaving here without that boy in the plane. So then we got a little room after the game with the president of Lisbon, his agent, his lawyer, and the boy. And I said, I want you to come back with us to Manchester. Now that's an acid test. If he doesn't want to come, you know he doesn't want to join you. He says, yeah, I'd love to come, but I want my mother here. So it's great. Next morning, his mother, his sister, his brother, the whole troop come out. And I said to him, I promise you one thing, you'll get the best education you can possibly get here, but you won't play every week. And he looked at him like that, you know, and he was impressed. He said, you know, he didn't expect that. I says, the Premier League is a very difficult league. And you may play substitute, sometimes you may play an odd game, you may play in the League Cup, which we do have a lot of young players. And but we said, but when do you get in the first team? Well, if you get to a level that's Manchester United, I can't stop you. You pick yourself. And he played his first game. He was sub in the first game of the season against Bolton. They came on at half-time. A crowd went absolutely mad on him. It was fantastic. The courage to take the ball. The first, the right back of Bolton whacked him right in the first minute. He came on in the second half. He got him and says, give me the ball. You know, the great players have got this courage. Nothing will daunt them. They're not afraid of anything. And Cristiano had that.
And how, when he first came to Manchester, I think he came with his mother and sister
they all
came
stayed,
up, right?
yeah.
How disciplined was he in his sort of daily ritual at that point?
Well, it was the best practice that I've ever known. But he had these, what you call Latin American faults.
You can get arrested for saying that in the state of California.
And it's a simple fault which can be eradicated if the boys get the right desire and the discipline and listen to us. And he was diving as a young kid. And
Diving to try and get a penalty.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And the players were great with him. Every time we'd go down, he'd scream, and the players would go and screaming him back, and get up here, you know that. And I used to get him all the time. The unfortunate thing for Ronaldo, because he was such a great player, the press never left him alone in that situation, you know, because after about a year and a half, it never happened. But any time he was fouled, somewhere along the line, the critics would say, "Oh yeah, he dives." But no, it's not true. Because the speed he was going at against defenders, all you need to do is nudge him a little bit, and the balance goes, and they go down. But he wasn't purposely diving.
Did the criticism get to him at
no,
all?
No, not a bit. No, I remember he came off that period, that season when Rooney was sent off, and he says he wasn't going to come back. And I flew out to Portugal, and I said to him, look, he wanted to go to Real Madrid. It was always his lifetime ambition to do that. And I said, look, you give me a year, and you're going with my blessing to Real Madrid. He was fantastic. But the first game was at Charlton, and I sat in the director's box, and there's this guy down in front of me, he's up, and he is giving him so much, the cursing and the language. And then about 5 minutes from half time, he got the ball, he beat 3 men, cut in, hit the other side of the bar. The guy never got up again. That was him finished. He had the courage to do all that.
And Cristiano today, many years later now, does he still have the same sort of drive and work ethic? Or?
I've never known anyone like him, honestly. I was at his house for dinner a few months ago, and his house is made for the best player in the world, no doubt about that.
How's that?
The gymnasium's probably about half the size of this. Well, a bit size here. He's got everything in it. He's got 2 pools. He's got a hot pool and a cold pool. He's got an ice room at minus 160 degrees. He goes in there for 10 minutes after every game. He's just unbelievable. And I says to him, he says to me, I'm going to retire at 35. I said, you're not retiring at 35. You can play to your 40 easily. Ryan Giggs has played to his 41. He said, no, I'm doing that, and I'm working on making sure I'm 3 kilograms down on my best weight the last 5 years. Brilliant. Right. Amazing.
Right. Now, with all these people, or players of incredible caliber, Beckham, Ronaldo, the others that you had, what were the tools that you used to maintain discipline?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to be consistent, who you are, and don't change. And I never changed. I didn't use discipline as a weapon against players. They would be disciplined if they stepped out of line for certain reasons, maybe a silly sending off or a misbehaving outside the ground. But I never used it as a continual weapon against them. You got disciplined, it's over, we move on. And they all accept that eventually. They understand who you are. That's the most important thing, because that's the essence of being a leader. And they know who you are, you're consistent, they trust that you're right. And discipline is an important aspect of managing. There's no question. Particularly, you're dealing with very well-paid players. If you've got a discipline that's different with different people, you're going the wrong way. So my discipline was always the same for everyone. I never treated anyone any different.
And what was the sort of discipline that the players dreaded? Was it the fine, or the threat of being transferred, or being put in the stands to watch a game?
I think every player wants to play on a Saturday. Now, there's only an odd occasion I would discipline a player by being in the stand. But the other aspect of putting players in the stand is because you have a squad of 24 and you have to pick only 11. Now, that's difficult. But what I used to do was, because my own experience as a player, I was told 50 minutes from the kick-off in the Scottish Cup final I wasn't playing. I was a top goal scorer, and there was no subs at the time. So that was always in my mind about how to treat players if they're not playing. So I used to call them in individually, all of them, and explain to them why they weren't playing. It was very easy towards, as time went on, because they knew with a squad of 24, it's not that 11 to win the league, it's a 24 to win the league or the cups. No question about that. And the important part to do that is to trust them to whatever team you play, and make them feel that they have contributed like the best players in winning.
And Sir Alex, how did you ensure that even for the biggest stars, they all understood that they were part of, not but part of a team?
Well, I think the best players, the ones that like to win most. The best players have got that ego. Winning is important to them. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed players with that confidence.
But how did you make sure that none of them began to think that they were bigger than United themselves?
Well, the message is, to prove they're the best, they have to work as hard as everyone else, and even more than other ones. And that was the message I always gave to them. The evidence is always in the football field. The best player can let himself down by not living up to the expectation. His own expectation, in fact. So oops, that's gone. So I had no great worries about that, really. The fact of being there such a long time, of course, helps. But also, I think that players who come to United, they come to such a great club. They don't want to miss a bus. They want to be on the bus all the time.
Right.
And I think that was really important.
Right. Now, let's switch the topic a little bit and talk about compensation. Some of these players are getting paid a large amount of money, obviously. How do managers cope? Not you, because you were among the highest compensated in the Premier League, but there are some clubs where the managers are paid less than their players. How do they ever have a chance of establishing authority in those clubs?
I think in most cases, I was maybe a little bit different, because I always felt that being the manager of Manchester United, I should be the highest paid person. But it's important, because the responsibility of managing that club is huge. I'm there more hours than any of them. I've got the biggest responsibility. So I felt that should be always recognised. Not always, but early years, by the way. It took a long time to agree with me, But I think from other managers' point of view, I think they expect that the top player is going to be paid more. I have no issue at all with what players get paid, the top players. You know why? I think if you look at golfers,
for sure,
American footballers, basketball players,
hedge fund investors.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. All you potentially wealthy young men out there. But I have no issue with that, because they're bringing 75,000 people into Old Trafford.
What about saying goodbye to players, whether they were 16, 17, 18-year-olds you didn't think were going to make it? And then let's talk about them, and then I want to talk about some of the players who'd done well by you that you had to say goodbye to. What about the
most
kids?
difficult task for any manager is telling a young kid he's not going to make it United. When we bring a boy to the club, we speak to the parents, and we always say this to them: we hope your boy plays in front of 75,000 people. If not, we're confident we can get him a career in the game. Even to this day, there will be about 90 players in England, Scotland, Denmark, Germany, all started their careers at Manchester United. And that's been like that for about 10 to 15 years. Very difficult to tell them that. I did a stupid thing when I was at St Mirren as a young coach. I was terrified to tell a young boy he was not, going to be good enough. So I had this idea, bring the five of them in.
5 young boys together. Yeah.
And I told them, one of them started crying. Oh, that was that finished. It was a difficult time. It was not easy.
And what about some of the older players who'd done very well by you, and then you had to break the news to them
Yeah,
that they
no,
were done.
that's so equally hard because you really become like a father to them, and it's such a family business, Manchester United, anyway, that, for instance, the team of '94 were with us for quite a few years, from round about '91 right through to about '96, '97. Like Dennis Irwin, Steve Bruce, Brian Robson, Gary Pallister, and they'd love to play till they're 90, but they don't actually realise that they're getting older. You know, I'm the one that recognises it because I see it in the football field. But what I did with them was made sure we give them free transfers. But you know, so they made a few bob. Dennis went to Wolves, Steve Bruce went to Birmingham. Brian Robson actually became a manager at Middlesbrough, and Gary Pallister went back to Middlesbrough with him. So we looked after the player, Paul Parker, gave him a free transfer, Mike Phelan a free transfer. They got clubs, West Brom, Paul went to Fulham. So we did well by them, in recognition for the service they gave us. And I think that was really important. Money that doesn't come into it when a guy's giving you 10 years. Right. You know, so I think that's the best way you can do it. And the only thing you can do, and it definitely works, is to be honest with them. You know, that's the only thing that works. You're not going to go and try to kid these guys on.
Right.
These are serious professionals who have been great to you.
Different topic. What about, again, for a lot of people setting out on lives in management and everything, what are some of the things that you wished you had known when you were 30 or 32, just setting off on your lifetime of management up in Scotland?
Yeah, I got this at Harvard. This was a belter of a question. I had to think about it for a while, and but it was the easiest when I think about it. You know, it's communication, recognition, absolute vital. And when I was 32, I went to rule the world. You know, I was a young manager at St Mirren. Most players are playing at 32, but I had a bit of a groin injury and I gave up to go into management.
It wasn't the elbows that were...
No, the elbows were polished. But and I was ordering the grass feed for the groundsmen, the pies for the director's room, the programs on a Saturday, and you know, you forget to manage up the way. And we had a chairman who wanted to go full time. You know, and that became difficult.
Right.
And yet I didn't realise I still carried on the way I did. And of course, he can sack you, which he did for.
So let's talk about the two things. One, how did you learn to delegate?
I think I had the natural thing about delegation, but I wasn't prepared to recognise it until I got to about maybe 60. You know, and then I realised, well, if I'm going to keep my energy, I've got to do it. And then you have to give the trust to that. And by that time, anyway, I trusted all my staff anyway. It was just a natural thing that when you've got energy and you've done something for so long, you don't think it's ever going to change. Of course, age changes you. And then I delegated far better, you know. I delegated a lot, actually, after that, you know. And the thing about energy, and anyone listening to this, is really important. When you start, like I did at United, we say at 43, 44 years of age, they see the energy, the players see the energy, they see it bouncing out of you. But when you get to the 60s, they still expect to see it. So I had to look at myself in terms of energy, the hours I slept. Because when I was a young manager, 4 or 5 hours, no problem. When I got to my 60s, I needed 6 or 7 hours. So you go to bed earlier, you look at your diet better. Saturday nights were out after the game, went home. You know, I very, very seldom went out on a Saturday night. So that I had to examine myself about my energy because people want to see the energy. A really important aspect of it, you know.
Right. And the second aspect of that was what you just alluded to at St Mirren, coming a cropper with the owner.
Yeah.
What's the advice you give managers these days when they call you about the relationship that they should have with the owner of the club that they're thinking about going to work for?
You've got to find a way. It doesn't matter what you think of them. You've got to find a way that can be a good harmony. That you can go on together. And also to agree that you're both going in the same direction. You know, I think that even if you find a way of actually being going on with them and they're going that way and you're going that way, it still doesn't work. So you have to find that way of agreeing where the direction of the club is going and the job you're doing. The other thing about recognition and communication is a really important part of it too, that you must recognise the people who are working for you. Knowing their names, saying good morning to them in the morning. I had a manager as a player who couldn't say good morning to you. He'd walk by you. Now that could be lack of confidence, could be anything. But you have to recognise the people who work for you. And every time we win a cup, or a trophy, every member of that staff were in that canteen. The laundry girls, the canteen staff, the groundsmen, champagne out, because it's their trophy as much as the players. And it became a team that way.
Did you enjoy the celebrations yourself?
No, not really. No, because maybe it'll last for me, any game will last for me about half an hour. And I'm thinking about tomorrow. You know, it's just...
Even after 1999, the famous treble
after the dinner, I went to bed. You know, after the club, I went to my bed.
Did you wake up the next morning in a bad mood? Or?
I was exhausted. After the game, actually, when the team were getting presented with the cup, I went for a walk. And in Barcelona, there's all these alleys and corridors and all the rest of it. And I'm walking through there in Moen, and I bump into this friend of mine from Aberdeen. He couldn't take it either. He was walking, how do we manage that? And we're walking through all these alleys, and then we see this buggy coming up. And it's a guy who's looking for me. He says, you've got to go to the press conference. This is about half an hour after the game. You know, I can celebrate for half an hour, you know, but then it goes away quickly for me.
Right. How did you avoid complacency and getting complacent?
Well, it's a disease. You know, every time at half-time if we win a game, it's come up. It's come up all the time. And, you know, there's nothing you can do about it when you get complacent. We had a few occasions, it was never 100% correct with United because of human beings. But we kept reminding them, when at half-time you're winning, complacency. You know, it's a disease. You know, the Ryder Cup, this is the message I gave to the team, the Ryder Cup. When
the British team? Yeah.
And I told them, I said, we think about Medina 2 years before. And they're 10-6 on a Saturday night. They're winning 10-6 America. And they're sitting there around their dinner, and they're probably saying to each other, oh, we only need 4.5 points. It's a great temptation, that, isn't it?
Right.
Only 4.5 points. And the coincidence resonated later. And but Europe won the first point. And they won the second point. And then there's a little bit confusion. Then they won the third point, panic, and then capitulation. And fortunately, with that message, but Europe are getting into the last game 10-6 in front. Fantastic.
Yep.
But it is a disease. We played in Everton. We lost the league because of it. 4-2, 7 minutes to go. We lost 2 goals. And that causes a league. And they're human beings. But the best way is to keep reminding them that complacency could cause everything. And there's no way out after when complacency sets in. There is no way out. Absolutely no way out.
One other question from me, and then I know we have some audience questions. You had this incredible record that's unparalleled. Did you ever feel that, or do you feel that you should have won more?
Absolutely. I do, honestly. I think that European Cups was the one is my biggest regret. And on some occasions we were very unlucky. Some occasions we get bad decisions against us. And some occasions we didn't play well enough. And with 3 semi-finals we lost. And the 2 worst were against Dortmund in '97 and against Leverkusen in 2001. We should have won those games.
Does that still bother you today?
Yeah, it is. I don't think you should ever look back with regrets. But when you ask a question, it rebounds to me all the time.
Right.
You know, but I know bitterness about it. Because football, I can't look at my career at United and regret anything.
Right.
I mean, I had a fantastic time. But the question is, will you put to me, yes, we should have won more European Championships. My last season, playing Real Madrid, that Turkish referee.
What do you really think of him?
He sends off Nani, the most ridiculous.
No, I remember that.
Absolutely control of the game. And we're losing the player at that time. It took us 10 minutes to get over it, and by that time they'd scored 2 goals. And even at 2-1 down, we made all the chances. So it's a disappointment, but as I say, I can't regret the career I had.
Let me welcome Niamh Given. She has, I know, a few questions from the audience. And how many people here are soccer players in the audience? Good.
Not bad.
And NCAA soccer players? Oh, fantastic.
I'm going to take the liberty of asking the first question. So you touched on aspects earlier, but here in the Valley, our equivalent of the prize footballers are the best engineers. They're paid the most, they get poached by rival tech companies. Yet most of us at the GSB are most likely to go in as their managers. For the early days, what are your top tips to garner their respect, despite the fact that we're not techie, retain control, and ensure that no individual becomes larger than the team or the organization?
Well, that I think I maybe answered a little bit here. We've been dealing with players who are megastars or players with egos and are wealthy. I honestly believe that those people are genuinely the winners all the time. That's why they got there in the first place. And yeah, there'll be occasions where they slip off the platform of where they were and maybe get complacent, whatever. But it's easy to remind someone is a winner. It is easy to remind them how they got there, what is their expectation. And I think it's important to remind them that they represent themselves in a big way. And I think that should always be reminded of them, you know.
What management trait did you not have that you wish you had, and how did you compensate for that?
Languages. Definitely languages. Because when United changed, when the academy system came into being and we had to change the dynamics of the club in terms of scouting, then more European players come in from South America, from France, Italy, Spain, whatever, Germany, all over. With one year, particular year, with 21 nationalities in the club. Now, I had French and German at school, but you know, it's like when you leave school and you don't use the languages, you forget about them. So when we started I started thinking about how I could communicate, particularly with the French players, and it's not easy. You know, so languages is really important. I said to my son Mark, I says years ago when he was at school, take languages. He said, no, I don't want the languages. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I says, take languages. Now he needs them, you know, 20 years later. And it's really, really important to communicate with players in their own language. That's why I brought Carlos Queiroz, and Carlos spoke 4 or 5 languages. Fantastic, because we had all these nationalities and the communication was easy then. Carlos would do all that, and I would do my little smutterings of French. We'd only had one German player, a young boy, Ronnie Zieler, who's with Hanover now. He was the only one I needed to communicate with in German. So I think that's important, languages.
I sympathise with that. I've barely mastered English, so. Now, I'm surprised that there weren't more tweets coming through for racing or wine tips from you, seeing that your track record on that is as good as Man U.
Forget the racing tips.
Right. But I sadly, and the audience are going to kill me, but we've only got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask a question to you both, actually, which is somewhat synonymous with the GSB, because it's one that we will have to answer as part of our applications. And that is, what matters most and why?
That's a good question. But I think your upbringing. I think my upbringing was fantastic. I had parents who gave me good disciplines, good advice. Don't be late. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't lie. These things stood by me all my life. And I hope then that foundation I bring to my own kids, and they can bring it to their kids. And that's what an upbringing is. It's an inheritance. That's what it is. And I think that was important to me.
Best family heirloom. Sir Michael?
Following your instincts.
Short and sweet. So with that, please join me in thanking Sir Michael and Sir Alex.